Aloha everyone, welcome and mahalo for joining us for Hawaiian Electric's first Resilient and Renewable Energy Community Workshop. We are here live tonight in the Ko'olauloa Moku at Kahuku Elementary School. Thank you again. This is our first hybrid meeting. So we have a combination of small virtual audience as well as those joining us via Zoom. So on behalf of the company, just mahalo to all of you for spending your evening with us. Before we begin, I wanted to briefly introduce the speakers tonight. My name is Kurt Sue. I am the Director of Community Affairs at Hawaiian Electric. Also tonight joining me is our facilitator, Alani Apio. He is with Kamau LLC, and I'll be turning over to him in just a little bit. To my left, your right, is our Director for Transmission, Distribution, and Interconnection Planning at Hawaiian Electric, Ken Aramaki. And to his side is Katie Wachter, Geospatial Science Researcher 3 at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Joining us for our question and answers later in today's meeting will be Colton Ching, our Senior Vice President of Planning and Technology at Hawaiian Electric. I also wanted to send a mahalo to our friends at the Centers for Resilient Neighborhoods. Miku Lenatin is joining us here tonight, as well as Dadi Kelly Paddock from Hui o Ha'ula. Mahalo to all of you for joining us here tonight. I wanted to briefly turn it over to our facilitator before we get started, Alani Apio.
Aloha, everyone. It's kind of an odd thing in this time on the earth of in-person and hybrid. So I guess the first thing to say would be we ask for your patience and understanding as we're trying to navigate both in-person and online. So the important thing is to make sure that you folks as the community are heard. And we are here to take that in to inform our work. And I'm here as a facilitator. I've worked with Hawaiian Electric since 2002. But I have an interesting relationship with the company. From the beginning, they hired me to be the proverbial fly in the ointment. So I am here to point out when, from a community standpoint, I feel that they could be doing better, or that they need to be doing different, or that they really screwed up and need to do different. So in that way, they hire me as your folks' advocate. And so for you folks online and for you folks in the audience, that's what I'm here for. And if you don't feel that I'm doing my job being an advocate for you folks, an advocate in the context as a facilitator is not to advocate for your point of view, but advocate for your messages getting to them clearly and being heard. And that's what I'm here for, not to make any kind, I'm not here to protect them. So whatever you have to say, you let it be heard. Thank you.
Mahalo, Alani. So thank you again for joining us. Our communities count on Hawaiian Electric to keep the lights on, and it's also our responsibility to stabilize energy costs. We recognize that it's a very challenging time right now with respect to the cost of electricity, and we absolutely would be willing to continue those conversations if communities would mind having them with us. That's part of the reason why we're here tonight, is to talk about our transition to renewable energy, and as part of that effort to stabilize our energy costs. And we're also here tonight to talk to the community and to hear from the community with respect to what we're seeing globally and nationally with respect to climate change. Florida and Puerto Rico are recent examples of our need to be resilient, especially being islands in the middle of the Pacific. And really wanted to shout out Ko'olauloa, because Ko'olauloa is really ahead of the rest of the island when it comes to planning. And Ko'olauloa recognizes that it's a vulnerable moku, and that there's a lot of effort being given to planning and preparedness. And there's a lot that other parts of the island and even Hawaiian Electric can learn from the efforts that Ko'olauloa has been undertaking. So thank you for that, and mahalo for your efforts. We're going to be learning a lot from you as part of this process, and that's the purpose of tonight's meeting. If we can go to the first slide, please. So reason for tonight's meeting, actually, just to
agenda.
Yeah. So for tonight's meeting, twofold. Again, we will be talking about, hence the name, resilient and renewable energy, efforts to decarbonize our energy system, and also working to get community input on how do we plan our renewable energy journey for reaching our 100% renewable energy goals. And all of those efforts are related. And so again, that's what the purpose of us coming out here is, really to share information, but also to hear from communities and to learn about the work that is being done in Ko'olauloa and across the different islands. We'll be going to different mokus. We also recognize that in Ko'olauloa, there are sensitivities with respect to renewable energy. There are processes that need to be improved. And that's also another big step as part of this effort, is we absolutely want to engage with communities to improve our processes, and we want to work alongside community to improve our policies in a way that would better fit the community's needs. And so our attempt at trying to be more accessible, more inclusive, that's all a part of this broader effort that we'll be talking about called Hawaii Powered. But with that, wanted to start us off. This is going to be more of a dialogue meeting. We have some short information that we wanted to share with you with respect to some planning that's been done on our end, but also then to hear and learn from communities on what community wants to prioritize, and the information that you can share with us so that we can work together on planning for a renewable and decarbonized energy system. Next one, please, Ken. And so really this is just a balance. Traditionally, we've been a technical planning utility, but we recognize that's no longer the model that we should be deploying going forward. Just balancing, equally important is the impacts that all of these changes and these technical plans have on our communities. And this is really the purpose of tonight's meeting, is to balance the technical planning, making it work, making sure we have a resilient and a renewable energy system, but also balancing that with communities' priorities, needs, and expectations. And Ken, if we can go to the Menti slide, please.
Sorry, the Menti.
The Menti. So apologize, everyone. I initially missed this, but for those of you joining us both in person and online, please do take the time to jump on this program called Menti. It'll allow you to participate in the discussion we're having here. There's going to be multiple ways to provide comments and to ask questions. Of course, for those who are attending in person, you can ask your question in person. You can also ask using this Menti program, which you can use your mobile device, and we'll all be able to see each other's comments using Menti on the screen as all of us are participating. And for those who are joining us via Zoom, you can use your hand-raising feature, and then we're going to integrate you as part of this meeting. And mahalo again to the Olelo team who's helping us enable this hybrid meeting. And also we'll be monitoring the chat box if anybody has any questions there. So multiple ways to provide input and comment. And by no means is that the only way to provide comments. A lot of the concepts that we'll be sharing tonight are going to be continuing conversations that will continue to collect your input as we move forward. And we'll be sharing more digital ways where you can access the same information and provide comments online. And for those of you who are just joining us virtually, you really didn't miss everything that is shared at this open house. For those who came to see us in person, will be a part of tonight's discussion and presentation. The only thing that we hope that people will join us in person for is to talk story with us in person. We have a lot of our subject matter experts that come out to us in these meetings across in the different moku, as well as we'll have light food and refreshments. So to the extent you're willing to come out and talk story with us, we will provide food and drinks. So just in hopes that for future meetings, you'll come out and join us. But with that, I'll transition over to my colleagues, Ken and Katie. Ken, would you mind sharing a little bit about our microgrid planning?
Sure. Thank you, Kurt. Aloha, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you for those calling in. So to start off kind of the technical portion of this, we're going to talk about What's on this slide are what's called community lifelines. And each of these lifelines are critical for the community. And essentially, any disruptions to any of these lifelines causes major disruptions to society itself. And they're all kind of interrelated, but at the heart of it, energy powers all of these lifelines. So we have to make sure that we plan for and make sure that we have a way to improve the resilience of energy. So we're going to talk about microgrids. So before we talk about the actual microgrids, I want to explain the different types of microgrids that we have. The electric system was originally built as a one-way flow of energy, starting from large generating plants, transmitting up to higher voltages, and then stepping down through various substations to ultimately get to customers. This dynamic has changed over the past 10 plus years, where now we have many resources added to the system at various parts of the system. So we have PV farms, we have wind farms, also energy storage being built, and all of these are interconnected at different areas of the system and at different voltages. In addition to that, we also have what's called distributed resources, distributed energy resources. And these are resources such as like rooftop solar, batteries at your home, also co-located PV or generating stations at customers. And these were generally implemented to offset the usage of customers. With the advancement of functionalities and technology in the past, I would say 5 years or so, these can now be created into what's called either customer microgrids, which powers generally one customer and provides backup capabilities for that one customer. And those are situations such as like PV and battery at your home, which can disconnect from the grid if the grid sees an outage, or if it sees an outage on the grid, sorry. And as well as, like commercial customers, they can put in diesel generation or PV to also have the potential to go off grid. And so these are what's called customer microgrids, as shown in the diagram. In the past year, we've also implemented a program to allow hybrid microgrids. Hybrid microgrids are basically clusters of customers that can now be a part of a microgrid and uses utility infrastructure within it. So in this diagram, it kind of shows that you could have multiple customer microgrids that with all of their resources can become a hybrid microgrid together. And when we developed this program, we quickly saw that probably the largest initial barrier for customers is even knowing that there is an opportunity for them to participate in this program, because there is a lot of technical complexity. There's a lot of things that customers just don't know about our system, as well as what's around them, to know if this is the right opportunity for them. So around that same time is when this program called the ETIP came out. And so the ETIP, or Energy Transitions Initiative Partnership Project, it's a DOE-funded program which we applied for. And essentially through that program, we get to get partners such as the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. So we get these really bright technical people to help us to create projects. And so with our project, we proposed a map of Oahu that can show where these opportunities are, so that customers have a way to at least initially know whether a hybrid microgrid is even feasible for them. So the overall objective of the project was to provide customers with a map identifying areas that are good candidates for hosting hybrid microgrids, and essentially to improve the electrical infrastructure resilience. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over.
DOE?
Oh, sorry. DOE is the Department of Energy. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Katie from National Renewable Energy Laboratories, or NREL, who's helping us with this project.
Yes, alphabet soup for everybody at home. I also want to thank my colleagues from Sandia National Laboratories that worked with us in creating the power flow analysis. Full disclosure, I'm a geographer, so I was doing the mapping part of this, not the engineering part of it. So in considering these potential hybrid microgrid hosting locations, we wanted to come up with a series of criteria that we could use to evaluate the potential suitableness of different sites. And this is like building and parcel level identification. And so the criteria that we've come up with so far includes criticality, so figuring out where are the critical loads, facilities, and services. So this includes emergency facilities like emergency shelters, fire stations, state and local emergency operation centers, Hawaiian Electric identified critical sites, telecommunications, water sources, water treatment, aircraft landing facilities, ports, harbors, EMS, fire stations, law enforcement, all kinds of things, between medical facilities, emergency facilities, and critical infrastructure. The second criterion that we came up with was vulnerability. So this is more focusing on the Hawaiian Electric grid and looking at what parts of the grid currently and are projected to endure the largest or most frequent outages. And so for this, we combined a few different types of data, mostly looking at natural hazards, so things like fire risk, landslide risk, sea level rise using the low emission scenario through 2050, as well as tsunami evacuation zones, and a remoteness index that we calculated to identify which communities are most at risk from being cut off from few sources of interconnection. And that includes transportation as well as the grid. In addition to that, we used results from Sandia National Laboratories power flow analysis, looking at outages from 2011 through 2020. And our final criterion was looking at societal impact. So what other locations would significantly impact customers if they lost power? And this was a more difficult criterion to define. And realistically, we wanted to represent the customers disproportionately affected by outages, and we wanted to ensure that equity and accessibility are considered when we're looking at potential hybrid microgrid sites. So far, we've included things like residential care facilities, schools, daycares, libraries, customers already receiving assistance or part of the ALICE program, as well as disadvantaged communities, and that is as defined by the Department of Energy's use of the Justice 40 definition, which looks at 36 different measures of burden. Yep. So the criteria for hybrid microgrid mapping kind of can stand alone, but realistically what we're looking for is how they overlap with each other so we can identify the highest impact areas to potentially prioritize for deploying. So the mapping analysis that we did covers all of Oahu. It's not final. This is its intermediate stage. Through this process, we incorporated dozens of spatial data sets representing Hawaiian Electric's distribution network. And we built a model showing where the customer energy resources, like Ken was describing earlier, like residential, solar panels, things like that, where they're located and are sited alongside electric demand to find balanced areas to potentially site these hybrid microgrids. But something that kept coming up was that this map is incomplete. It focuses on the infrastructure and not the people. And we really need to consider how the people that live here are affected by these service disruptions. So this is where you all come in. We've included a lot of data in our analysis, but we have a few key questions that we can't answer by ourselves. So are there criteria that we're missing in these maps? And what places specifically in your community should be included? Where are the places that you would go if there was an emergency that we wouldn't know about from an official data set? So we'd love to have your perspective, and to help facilitate those conversations, we prepared this map for Ko'olaloa, sorry. And, yeah, excuse me. And we're hoping to talk about what specific things are in your community that are important to you. So at the end of this, we will share community-level maps for these hybrid microgrid opportunities like Hauula here. And we want to show where these criteria and the community's critical resources meet. So I encourage you to visit hawaiipower.com/etip and check out our MOKU map and criteria information and share with us there. In addition, I'd like to turn it over to Ken and Kurt so we can talk about it now a little bit.
So just a reminder here, for those, again, multiple ways you can provide input. There's lots to process, so please feel free to ask questions along the way as well. But what the screen is showing up here is if you wanted to access via your mobile device, you can join us on Menti. Some of us who are in person can jump on too. We'll all be able to see each other's inputs, questions, and comments. You can also raise your hand in the Zoom. You can put comments in the chat box. And for those who are here in person, you can ask questions and share comments directly. But as Katie and Ken said, this is an incomplete process, and what we really need and would like is for communities to weigh in and to share information about what they know best about their community. The community is really the expert and has that insight and expertise that we need as part of this planning process. So really encourage people who are joining us and those here in person to share those thoughts. And Alani is going to be helping us with the comment portion of this portion of the meeting.
Okay, a couple things before we start. Kanani is personing the oversight of the online, and you're going to let me know after we discuss in person, yeah? So one important point that I wanted to bring up to the community members, both here in person and those online, and that is that in planning for this work, like I said, I've been working as a facilitator for the company for like 20 years now. It's hard to get excited about long-term planning. Like it's detailed, it's not immediate and in front of us, and yet it is so very important. And you folks out here in Kahuku know that more than a lot of people on the island because you are an isolated community, because you have to be self-sufficient in many ways. And so I would encourage you folks, even though it's not the most exciting work, we at Hawaiian Electric absolutely need that community input, because as Kurt was talking about, and Katie as well, if you did a map of the island that's just based on sun saturation and where the sun is shining and where it's most, or the wind, right? You get specific areas that from a scientific point of view are the most eligible and efficient and productive. But we all know that when it comes to the community level, that doesn't mean it works for us humans on the ground. And so this is the hard work that we are embarking on, simultaneous to all of the everyday work that has to go on to keep the lights on, to transition to 100% renewable is going to take our hard work now. And so we would love for those that are participating online and for you community members to really give your deep thought and your deep knowledge about your communities to us so that we can help facilitate building the appropriate systems. And one final word, as Kurt had mentioned, these are the beginning of discussions. And so we hope that you folks will continue on this pathway with us and help all of us design the best systems. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to open the floor to questions and comments about what you folks just saw. We've tried, like, this is deep in the weeds kind of stuff. And so even me, like, I had to sit with them for quite a few hours to really get what we're after. And what we're after at this point in the discussion is you folks know your communities best. You've seen what we're after. What are we looking at in Ko'olauloa that is missing as far as the analysis of where projects and microgrids could best be placed? Is that a fair way of putting that? Okay. So, and then that was a lot of information. So if we need to go back and get any corrections or any more information, please let us know. Questions? No, we'll get that at the end. Yeah. You guys are the two. So did you have anything that you wanted to question, you wanted more clarification on, or you want to share with us from your perspective, where are those hubs in the community that Hawaiian Electric and the partnerships should be looking at to center their work on microgrids?
Well, first of all, every community here is quite different, really, and so I don't know if there's anybody here from Kahuku, but we should have them talk. I was really hoping more people would come out tonight, and this could be a great conversation. It's going to be a great conversation, but I'm from Hau'ula, and Hau'ula is different from Kahuku. Different feelings, different interests, different age groups a lot. So it's and different terrain. In Hau'ula, we're very, very close to the water and the mountains, and we don't have many places to go between them. And so we have a lot of our community is in the flood and tsunami zone, and we're used to going Mauka. Whenever anything happens, we have to go Mauka, and to get away from the ocean, really. And we worry our beaches, as you say, are eroding into the ocean. We're losing a lot of land. We're going to be losing homes eventually, and it's very hard. We're seeing a lot of our favorite old trees fall into the ocean or become their roots are inundated with salt water, and so they're dying. And so in Hau'ula, we have been looking at this for a long time, and we do have a lot of power outages. We never know how long it's going to take to get back on. And so we've transitioned from candles to lanterns now. And so we frequently experience it, and we don't know if it's an accident just down the road or something more serious, So it's, and as you know, when the road falls in because of the water pipes or whatever else it might be, it's very dangerous for people out here, and that danger grows on people. You become more fearful of driving down the road. We had one lady who the hole in front of her was like 10 feet deep, full of water, and her car fell in there. And she was very lucky that someone was behind her that grabbed her out of that car. So I think it's very wearing on people, and not to know if you're safe just driving down the road, not to know if you're going to have power, and as you said, and you all have said this so many times, I just think of it every time I open my mouth. I think power is really the source of all our critical lifelines in many, many ways. And we are planning a resilience hub in Hau'ula for all of Ko'olauloa because we've been working on this and worried about this for over 10 years. And it just grows every day. And we just feel like we can't do it soon enough. So we actually have a technical assistance grant from ETIP right now, too. And I spent, this morning on a technical assistance call on microgrids, right? So, but we need your help, and we need to, like you said, sit down and figure out where these microgrids are going to be. I personally think they're great, and we want to have them all over the place so that we can keep the lights on and help people out with energy burden, and we can feel like somebody cares and somebody's watching out for our community, because sometimes it feels like nobody is. So we really appreciate you all being here tonight and diving into this with us, because I know there's a lot to figure out. And I personally didn't see all the small stuff on the maps, and I'd like to understand those maps a little bit better. So I can give you more specific details.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. A couple points that I wanted to make from what you said. And us local people who've been here in the islands long enough know that one Ahupua'a, one valley is different from the next. So I appreciated that you're recognizing that Hau'ula is not Kohuku, is not Laie, is not Punalu'u, and we recognize that as well. So just want to take a moment, to recognize that. And also, as we've talked about, Ko'olauloa is an especially vulnerable coastline. And it doesn't have a huge population like downtown Honolulu, but it has a deeply connected community, right? Even though you guys are separate and different, you're all connected, you know each other, yeah? And that adds to your folks' own human resiliency. So I just wanted to say that out loud and honor that. Sir, did you have any offerings to us?
No, well, like Dottie said, every community is a little bit different, but mostly we all go up. We follow the same thing that everybody's been doing for years. And normally at those areas where, actually as the years have gone on, we've gotten better and better. Every time we do it, we get the right stuff this time, we get the right battery things, we get the right coolers, but the electricity is going to be the main one, right? Besides the road, and I just wanted to point out that right now the most critical area in Ko'olauloa is Ka'awa, right in front by the school. You can see that coming right up to the road. Eventually in another year and a half, it's going to be on the road, or even sooner than that. It's already right there. Yeah, and so I don't know what DOT is doing or anybody else, but you folks are carrying the lines right above that too. So you folks are going to have to be moving stuffs around, and so now is the time to be thinking what all of the partners are going to be working on making sure that it works. Right next to that is Kualoa, same thing too. Hau'ula by the what road is that? Kukuna Road. That's coming all the way in. Yeah, and so, and as residents, we noticed that and alarmed, and nobody's saying anything about it, right? So I think when you folks say something about it, when DOT says something about it, and we'll be working on this is what's going on. Hey, gang, let's work on this thing together and communicate, talk, and how we can make this thing work. But I like that you folks have come forward and made that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then one thing that I just wanted to note from that, we did work in Ko'olaupoko, we meaning Hawaiian Electric, over the last couple of years to build resiliency plans, right? And you folks know about that and probably, right. The point is, they have their own connections with all of those different agencies and entities. And what I believe I can say on behalf of the company, and Kurt, you correct me if I'm wrong, is that they can help be the messengers. That these meetings and our feedback, all of this is going to be captured and it's going to be put in a report, and they can take that information and be your folks' advocates to the other entities as well. And that's part of what they're doing for all of this work. Kurt, did you want to say a few words?
Good point, Alani. Thank you for that. And there's a lot of work happening in parallel, as Alani said. And so our goal as part of this too is this is the energy piece, but we're making sure that we're talking to the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency, our partners at the Centers for Resilient Neighborhoods. They're really trying to drill down and do the work modeling after what Hui o Ha'ula and others have done with respect to identifying hubs at the community level, and even going up to the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. There's lots of disaster mitigation, planning, and preparedness work going on, and our goal is to really help and connect those dots, and to the extent that we can elevate these concerns and have and bring and convene and bring partners together, we absolutely will. Just to transition, we do have some questions, to prompting questions on the Menti. So if Olelo, you can help us share that with our audience, our in-person and virtual audience. This is just a question that is more for dialogue. Again, if people want to comment on the Menti or just share their thoughts via on Zoom, we can transition to check in with the online audience in addition to the great comments that were shared here in person. All of this, as Alani said, is being documented, and it's not only limited to this single meeting. A lot of this will be available. There's opportunities to provide input on Hawaiian Electric's website. That's hawaiipowered.com, where we're going to have all of this same information loaded so that people can, as Dottie said, take a deeper dive and look at the maps and the different analysis that was done, and then add specific comments to that. But really tonight, we're trying to ask from community and our online participants and others, are we on the right track with respect to the criteria that's being proposed, with respect to facilities that you might immediately be aware of that we should document? Everything that is contributed to this process will be documented and weaved into the planning process. And that's going to be an ongoing and continual process with all of our partners going forward.
Kanani, did we have any questions from the online community? Okay. All right, where shall we go, Kurt? Oh, well, before we do, I have the prompting question, yeah? What is the prompting question?
So with respect to the criteria, is the criteria aligned with the community's resilience priorities? What are we missing, or in any elements?
Can we pull up the criteria slide so that they can take a look, both online and in person, what those criteria are? Shoot, I know I can't get too far this way. Okay, so I'm sorry, the feed is probably losing my face, but it's more important to be able to read this. So I'm going to read this out loud. Criteria for hybrid microgrid mapping. Wastewater treatment plants, towers, AM and FM transmission, emergency medical stations, fire stations, local state emergency operation centers, national shelter system facilities, internet exchange points, ports, refrigerated warehouses, law enforcement, hospitals, dialysis, nursing home, urgent care, airports, aircraft, and harbors. Question, I know that's a lot, but in hearing all of that, is there anything in your folks' community that isn't on there that needs to be mapped and made aware of? So let me give you an example. Go ahead.
We only have the fire station, we have Kahuku Hospital, we have the internet service, and we have stores. Very limited. We don't have a whole bunch of that thing over there, right? So it makes it a lot easier. But we just need to make sure that the communities have them. Each community have a microgrid and is centrally located somewhere, probably where they normally go, in case there was a big tsunami, and where the electricity could still run, you know, and that's probably what we're probably looking at.
Well, I would just say too that we don't have a lot of infrastructure out here. What we have is very important, right? So, of course, there's a hospital here in Kahuku, and there's an EMS station and a fire station in Hauula, a brand-new fire station. It's very important. However, when we ask the firemen what are they doing in an emergency, and when we ask the policemen what they're doing in an emergency, they're not part of our emergency planning because we don't know. And I think they've been told from up above not to talk with the local emergency planners. You know, we've had an emergency planning team for over 10 years. And we've had all kinds of training, all kinds of planning. We have a tsunami evacuation site, and we're planning a resilience hub. And yet, we can't really have a conversation. This is something that has to change. We have to be able to be talking to the fire stations. We have to, I mean, I know all the guys there, and I like them dearly, but they can't talk to us about these things. And the police. When we have a major emergency, we all are going to have to be our own boots on the ground. It's too far to Honolulu. They're going to be overwhelmed with what's going on there. And they've told us that. We're on our own for 30 days or more. So we have to be ready and prepared. And so, but the first responders out here, the police and the firemen, we need to be talking with them too, because they can help us and we can help them. And it's going to take all of us working together, whether we have a microgrid or not, you know. And so the microgrid is very important. In the planning for the Kolaloa Resilience Hub, I had a microgrid workshop today online with INREL. And we have an ETIP grant. We're working on that with them. And a microgrid has to be part of what we do. And it should be part of this planning process as well. We're going to be up on a hillside in Hauula, around 60 to 90 feet high, out of the tsunami and the flood zone. So, and we plan to have dialysis services there and a medical clinic there as well. We're working in partnership with a number of physicians, and we're planning on doing that because I hope Kahuku gets one too, but you know, we don't have dialysis services out here at all. And if we don't have those in an emergency, people are going to die. So we need to do some things about this. So I hope you keep our hub in your plan, and I hope that, you know, we can, I think, of course, the hospital must have a microgrid as well. And those fire stations can work with the community, you know. So, because without power, we have no water. And that's going to be a big deal. We have to keep the power on. And if those microgrids do nothing else but, you know, keep that water flowing, that's a major issue.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. One thing I just want to make sure that gets highlighted for the report is your folks' frustration with getting good communication with the police and the fire people. You know, we are not them, but we will take that message and reinforce it back when the report is ready and with the work that they do. Secondly, I wanted to ask, so I grew up Ewa Beach when there was one road in, one road out, one lane in, one lane out, Fort River Road, right? And back in the day, there were people and families that were hubs, right? So my question, knowing how you folks still are rural and small, on a like very community-based level, and you don't, you can give us this information afterwards or however is most appropriate, but are there either families or cultural groups or community groups that we should be aware of that are their own hubs that we could potentially work with or that we should know about because they provide services and support and they could, they should be part of this. Or, that kind of information doesn't come up on scientific reads. So is there anything, and I'm looking to the online, Kanani Monitoring Online, if there's anything that we should be aware of?
I think one of the, everything on ground level, we're not going to be there. Nobody's going to be there, and so it has to be anything going up, right? So Mauka, like the Mormon Church in Hauula on the top, like Kahana, they have where the dam is at. They have a big area, and that's where everybody goes. All the families, in fact, Ka'ava and Punaluu guys come up there too. They picnic and they barbecue and everything. Every area has their own set what they normally do, and it's just helping them out after the initial shock of making sure that there is a transition where they're able to continue on. Yeah, whether back down there or even up there. They might have to stay up there anyway. But if they can go back down, they want to clean up and all that stuff.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. In this environment, again, just talking back what you said, the importance of Makai and Mauka, because you folks are so tight against the ocean and the mountains, that is a very real situation that always everybody is quite mindful of, and that we need to be aware of that in our planning processes. You always got to go Mauka, otherwise you're not solving any problems. Okay, thank you.
Well, great input, and mahalo for that. And we will document that as part of our process. So this is an open-ended, ongoing question. As Nadia pointed out, we absolutely will note the future location of the Resilience Hub as a documented facility that should be included as part of this microgrid mapping, and we do have, thanks to Dottie, the facility information for that. If we could go to the next question, please. Again, so if there are more from the community, we will absolutely welcome that. I mean, some of this requires more thought and more thinking about what are we as community members aware of, where are important gathering places, school facilities even that might be, maybe the facility is not quite hardened, or maybe it should be. All of those are important considerations to build into the planning. And then this next question, again, we're not expecting to solve it here in tonight's workshop. It's going to be a continuation in terms of our dialogue. But just thinking about when, as Ken mentioned, when we're isolating these areas and prioritizing facilities with power, being that we're moving towards a decarbonized renewable energy future, how does the community want to prioritize those facilities being powered? Is it through things like solar plus batteries, concepts like using existing generation? There's mobile generation. What would be the community's preference in terms of how to power these proposed microgrids within the community? They do require generation, so it's more just a open dialogue in terms of what would be in the community's interests, or would they like to learn more about?
Okay, good.
So I just wanted to make a comment. When you have an emergency like it's going on in Puerto Rico, where they've been out of electric for so long, and it's still out of electric for so long, they don't care how you get electric, right? Whether you're doing them the energy efficient way or you're going back to the old way. When it's an emergency, everybody just wants the electricity on. Yeah, they're not interested in that. We can work on the other things after, but during that time, just put them on. Thank you.
Important point. Thank you.
You're asking us what other source of energy, what types. At the Resilience Hub, we had this conversation this morning, so it's very near and dear to me. We, of course, solar, but we have to have something besides solar. So we're going to be looking at turbines, geothermal, and also biomass, and maybe even hydrogen, but I don't know for sure. But we've been talking about all of those, and that's part of our technical assistance effort is with ETIP is to figure that out. And but biomass is something that is I think very promising, and we've been working with a company that I don't know if it's beyond prototype, but they've been talking about what they can do, and it's called TCOM. And there's one thing we don't have a shortage of out here is biomass. You see, that really means all the green waste and just any kind of thing that's, biomatter. So we think that that might be one really good solution. And this particular biomass strategy, the TCOM, has no emissions. So it's something that would be clean, and it would also take care of a lot of biomass that we have lingering around every day. And especially if we're in an emergency and it's over, there's going to be a lot of biomass to get rid of. So it's I think is something that we're really interested in. And if you know of other types of biomass strategies, we're open to looking at them as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So a couple things. One is, I wanted to ask two questions to you folks.
One other thing is we are looking at turbines too. So
No, so that was the question. It's I'm often a friend often reminds me it's good to know what you want. It's better to know what you don't want. And so recognizing the deep conflict that was set off by the process whereby this end of the island got a whole bunch of turbines that not everybody was happy and supportive of, to say the least. Is there, when you mention turbines, are we talking about, micro size? Have you folks talked to your communities to say, oh, this size is okay, we're good with that? Or is it still a point of contention? Even just talking about turbines? Because as soon as you said the word, it was like, okay, didn't see that one coming.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with turbines. It's just the way you put it, right? Nothing's wrong with any type of thing that where it can generate electricity. It's just that I don't know if you folks were part of that electricity part, but they just put them too close to the community, too close to everything. And we did our homework on that. In Germany, they go at least a mile out, at least a mile. That's the closest to any animal, any farm, or anything, and it's normally even further than that, right? And so we want to look at who has the best technology, what countries have the most, understand it the most as far as health and what works, and what does not work. And so all of that thing went right out the door when they put it right next to the school, right next to other housing. They're just close to show you how incompetent the planning people were who did that. That's incompetent. That's like the rail. The rail and that thing is connected. They both are done by incompetent people. So I always wanted to put one of those big things at the state capitol, and one at the Department of Health building, and one at the City Hall. Because all three of them should live with that every day, because that's what they have to live with 24/7. I was one of the first ones that was arrested when they came to the Kahuku sign, because this is all of our communities. I live in Kahana, but this is all of our community that you're affecting. And so you're not going to put them in Hawaii Kai, next to Hawaii Kai at the high school over there. Why would you think of putting it over here at Kahuku? So anyway, that's the issue I had with that.
Appreciated and respected very much. Kurt, did you want to take a moment to talk about process, just to understand, for our audience online and for you folks, how that occurred in brief and how we're trying to address it?
Yep, and that actually will segue into the next portion of our meeting, but you're absolutely right. Your concerns are heard and well noted. There absolutely needs to be improvements to the renewable energy development process, and this is an attempt at trying to do that with community. It was done in a way that was not inclusive at the time, and we've learned a lot by going through that process, and there definitely are improvements that we are making going forward. A lot of it involving community much earlier in the process, as early as we're doing here tonight, and it's not always the most enjoyable or exciting work to talk about the long range, but that's where these procurements and RFPs get designed. And that's really the work that we would like to sit down with communities and to help us design and improve these processes, figuring out how can we include our community voice in the RFP design. And I'll be sharing a little bit more about that in the next portion of our meeting, because we've learned a lot by talking to communities. Hui o Ha'ula, I have spoken with some of the members of Kukiai Kahuku, and there absolutely are improvements we need to make. We've done a lot of work in the West Oahu region, where there's a lot of renewable energy development there, and there has been significant improvements that came about from that community when all of the key organizations and leaders came together and aligned their interests and filed them with the Public Utilities Commission to make improvements to our process that are in effect going forward on a for every single RFP going forward, not just that one single procurement. So that's what we would hope to do with Ko'olauloa, with Ko'olaupoko, all the different sections of the island. We really would like to see that as being our new process going forward, and we'll be talking about that in a bit. But before jumping in there, Kanani, are there any comments or questions online that anybody wanted to share? Okay.
One quick note, just I'm sure you folks know it, but just in case for anybody watching online, RFP is an acronym for Request for Proposals, and at the macro level, Hawaiian Electric puts out RFPs, right, that you are seeing for renewable energy, renewable firm power. That is the beginning. Well, that's part of the beginning of the process of how we get a major project agreed to and cited and built. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alani. And so just really quickly before Ken shares more information about our planning process, we have launched a new website called hawaiipower.com, and this is part of leveling the playing field with respect to planning. It's a lot of reports, it's a lot of studies, it's a lot of technical analysis, but what we're trying to do is to make that information more accessible and usable to communities so that you can see the same information that we at Hawaiian Electric are looking at with respect to achieving our renewable energy goals. And so it's a gradual process, but again, we invite you to please visit this site where you can provide your input on the microgrid mapping, and we're also going to be talking about more big picture. Thank you again for spending your time with us. This is an opportunity to continue that conversation about powering microgrids, but on a larger scale. For the island of Oahu, how are we going to reach these decarbonization goals in a way that is equitable to our communities, in ways that communities want to see their future, not just driven again by technical analysis, but also by community input. And so this site, I do encourage community members to please look at it. It's not, it's a work in progress, but it is an attempt to share that planning information. And Ken's going to be sharing a little bit more about a new process, an analysis that was done where, we looked at, in partnership with partners at the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute, National Renewable Energy Labs, we looked at the island of Oahu. We looked at the demand for what we need to be able to provide as we get off fossil fuels, and that's going to in turn stabilize our energy costs. But really, we're looking at what's the potential for renewable energy. Right now, the two most affordable technologies or cost feasible are wind and solar. So that's what was looked at first. That doesn't mean that other technologies are off the table, but if we're looking at it from an affordability standpoint, those are the two that we started with. But we wanted to show you that analysis. If you don't mind, Ken, I'm going to turn it over to Ken to share more information about this analysis that was done.
Before we do that, Kurt, I just wanted to take a moment. So in our planning work, our meaning myself and Kurt and his teams, over the years, I just want to acknowledge when we saw what went down in Kahuku, we hurt. And I know we can't, it's a big company, Hawaiian Electric, and it doesn't, you know, when you go up, we think of corporations very impersonally, but a major portion of their leadership, all the way to the top now, and the CEO, we're all local, born and raised, and we do not do ourselves. We hurt ourselves when we put up situations where we pit communities against each other. And so I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that we saw that happen, we hurt, and we're trying to address it. And Kurt's going to talk about the ways to address it later, but I just wanted to acknowledge, like, you were at front line, you got arrested. That shouldn't happen. That we shouldn't put our communities, you know, pitting one against each other. So just want to acknowledge that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for all your feedback, by the way. It's really insightful for us. We're going to kind of shift into something different than what I talked about before. So similar, but different. So now we're going to talk about long-term planning. So when our ultimate goal is to get to a decarbonized company, and also everybody knows that our target is by 2045 we want to be 100% renewable. So how do we actually get there, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that we need to do to get into place, and even though 2045 sounds like a long time, it's really like 22 years from now, which is not a long time when you talk about building utility infrastructure to support it. So in our long-term planning, we consider time, the time it takes to build stuff, time it takes to develop. We also want to make sure that we keep things affordable. We want to make sure that we put in resources and add things so that we can stabilize bills. And then we need to take into account land use. We want to make sure that we're not taking over land that should be used for other types of development. And then for renewables, we look at also energy resources, the types of technologies, and those things also continue to evolve. So we have an eye on the market, and we make sure that we're seeking the best available, so that we're not using old technology essentially. And then we get to community impacts, and that's why partly why we're here, and partly why we're going to continue to come and speak with the community. And then a big one is we need to make sure we maintain reliability and seek opportunities to improve resilience. So these are kind of, I'm sure we look at way more things than that, but that would just make this puzzle unwieldy that's on the screen. But essentially the main point is that we are looking at long-term planning, and we're here now to plan for this 100% future. And the things that we need to do to put in place so that we can meet those goals, we need to start now. Yeah.
Earlier I was looking at a map where there were 2 blue areas where they had the most winds for wind turbines and stuff. And to me, and it's always been that way, is that if you're in a valley, you're going to get a lot of wind all the time. It doesn't have to be on this side of the valley. It can be on the other side of the valley where there's nothing over there. The problem is going to be the transmission line that gets to the middle part, right? So you have the town side, and you have that valley coming over, that mountain side. I think putting them in the middle would solve a lot of your issues, because nobody's in the middle between the 2 mountains, right? And you can put a whole bunch of them, as many as you need to. But that should be the place where all of them should be placed, because in the long run, they're going to be feeding both sides, right? You're going to have some coming windward side, some going to the other side of the island. And that way, and I know that the investors who want to make the most buck for that thing is not going to be happy, but I think that is the way it's going to work long run, even for solar. Yeah, but I think every house should have solar. Every housetop should have it, mandatory, and should be cheap enough where when they upgrade to a better system, where they're able to change over to a better system, like on a lease program or something, and so it makes it makes it more user-friendly, and I think other countries are going to do the same thing too.
Thank you for that. Was there any, did you guys want to,
Yeah.
you meaning your Hawaiian Electric team, want to make any clarifications or more information on what he
Yeah,
was just talking
no,
about?
that's a great comment, and we should probably hire you to tee up the next slide, because that's what I'll kind of talk about in this, what we call the renewable energy zone analysis. So a couple things that you talked about was transmission required to support the facilities, and that's really what, well, actually, sorry, that's the next slide, but we'll kind of talk about what we're doing so that we can prepare for that. And then the other thing that you talked about was rooftop solar systems. Actually, for us to meet the decarbonization goals, we need to be aggressive on both fronts, both rooftop solar, new systems with storage, as well as utility scale solar. So the thing that we're talking about today is more the utility scale stuff, but recognizing we need to be aggressive on the rooftop side too. Yep. So thank you. So this slide, before we get into the meat of what your question was, this is kind of where we are today. So today, the load, you need to have more generation generally available than your demand, right? So the demand on Oahu is about 2,000 megawatts. So we have 1,100 megawatts.
Sorry, can you clarify what that means in the context of a daily time schedule, a weekly? What are we talking about?
So the peak demand of the system is around 2,000 megawatts. So throughout the day, it's kind of cyclical. But in the end, we need to make sure that we prepare for at least 2,000 megawatts plus contingency. And I'm probably getting these numbers wrong because my boss is looking at me right now.
Hi, I'm Colton Ching. I'm also from Hawaii Electric, and I lead the planning teams that are here tonight. So to Alani's question here, do I need to get in the camera? Sorry about that. So to Alani's question, to clarify the peak power demand. So tonight we just passed the time of day when on this island in total, everyone living here using electricity, we typically use the most electricity right around 7 p.m. And that's pretty consistent across the year. And kind of around September and October is when our use at 7 p.m. Is actually the highest compared to other times of the year. And it makes sense, right? Sun starts to go down earlier. We turn on the lights earlier. It's more hot. There's more kona wind days, so we tend to run our air conditioning a little bit more. And so all of that combines to 7 p.m., the most power, and usually September, sometimes October, when it's the highest usage in the year. And although Ken is far more educated than me in engineering, the peak load for electricity use on Oahu is around 1,200 megawatts, 1,200 megawatts, which is a lot. You know, it's by far much more than any of the other islands, as you can imagine, right? But in Hawaii, although Oahu seems big, 1,200 megawatts to us is really big. When you compare us to California, other states, other countries, it's very small. Yeah. Sorry, Ken.
No, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was just to show where we are in our renewable energy progress. So we have about 1,143 megawatts of available renewable capacity. So that includes 763 megawatts of customer-sited renewable, which are like rooftop solar, as well as essentially PV sited on customer property. That, in addition to, we have several projects that are currently in development that amount to 384 megawatts. And so these are what's considered, in general, what we call stage 1 and stage 2 RFP projects. And in addition to that, we also have firm capacity. And so long-term, this firm capacity, we're going to continue or start to, this non-renewable firm capacity, we're going to start to try to find ways so that we can offset that with renewable resources. So this is kind of like what's happening today, and then we need to plan for this, 2040, 2045 horizon. So one of the challenges, as you alluded to, is identifying what is required to support these renewable resources. So the way that RFPs work is the way that they currently work is we identify a capacity need on the system, and we submit a request for proposal, and developers work with other landowners, and then they find locations that are suitable for development, and they submit a proposal to us. So the way that it's been working out is that these resources are added to areas where there's transmission lines situated around those areas, so that you don't have to build long transmission lines to these resources. But you also have to make sure that there's actual capacity to support that flow of energy. What we want to do with renewable energy zones is that, or this analysis, which I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this is kind of just our initial take at it, and we want to that's why we're here for community feedback, to get more feedback on it so that we can refine this. What this is we're looking at, we worked with National Renewable Energy Laboratories, and it just happens to be Katie that we worked with 3 years ago. But they helped us map out where there's potential for wind or solar, looking at technical data, but also looking at it in terms of what types of land use there is. So certain types of characteristics of land was also taken off of this, what's called a potential. And so that potential is shown in that green shaded area of this map. And with the green shaded areas, we then looked at what are potential groupings of these areas, ultimately so that we can try to identify what transmission level support is needed to allow interconnection at this level. So this is a really long-term planning look at it. And so again, when I said 23 years from now, when you look at transmission development, that's going to take 10 to 15 plus years. Now you're really at kind of a 10-year left to plan and start development of these resources. So that's why we're starting now to look at this future. So yeah, again, this is an initial study. This is to get more feedback on it. Go ahead.
We know that there's always going to be more development, housing development, shopping centers, whatever, and they will be taking up a lot of the space, right? And so that's why you need to go as far back as you possibly can, maybe even on Venus or Mars, which would be in the middle, and then let it, because everybody's going to be building, right? You don't want to be next to somebody's school eventually, because you want to make sure that this is my area, you guys are all on the other side,
Thank you.
You might have been on this Zoom meeting with me, but there were lots of people. But a few months ago, I sat in on a Zoom meeting with the Canary Islands. And the Board of Water Supply was having that. I don't know how I got invited, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And were you there, Kurt? Were you on that meeting? Okay. They are an archipelago just like Hawaii, and that's why Board of Water Supply went to them, and they were very, we're very concerned about our water. They've already lost their water. So, and it's very, very expensive to desalinate water. But what I was so impressed with is that place is like a university of all kinds of opportunity for renewable energies, and they're taking all this data. It's like they're studying everything they do, and they've got a lot of data on it. So if I were you, I would want to kind of check in with what they're doing there and how they're doing it and everything, because they seem like they're far ahead of anybody else on the planet, and they're very serious about it. So, and they were very forthcoming and provided a lot of information. So I think they must be teaching a lot of people around the world about all their different experiences with different types of green power. And then the other thing I'll say is I lived on Pacific Heights for a while, and that was the windiest place in the world. So I don't know how you capture that wind, but my windows rattled day and night there, you know, because the wind was whipping through those valleys. And I'm sure you're aware of how that wind really funnels through those valleys. It's really amazing. But I'm with you. I think we need to do the research and figure out, you know, how to do this well and talk to communities as you go. I think that's the nicest thing you can do along the way, you know, is include the voice of communities that feel invisible. It's really special. And I hope from now on everybody in Kahuku comes out and talks to you about this, because you need to be able to capture those voices somehow. And in Hau'ula, we've had the good fortune of having a community center there, and we serve everybody in Kolauloa. And there's something to be said about community centers, you know, that engage people night and day. And people feel safe, and people come, and they've talked there before, they've been there with their friends, and it's just comfortable. And it may not be a school building that's like that, you know, because school buildings are government, you know. And so I just, I hope you don't give up on this, because I think it's a really important step on behalf of your organization, and I think people really do want to give you input. So I just encourage you to keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I just want to make a note that what you said about community centers, that we may not be thinking about that, and it's certainly not the energy company's kuleana to build a community center, but that has to be taken into, or should be taken into consideration, because that's part of the human element that actually makes those resiliency centers work and the plans work, right? Microgrids are tied to that in the context of, if people don't know what's going on, if people don't have places to gather and talk about all of this, then when those times happen that are needed, the appropriate steps aren't taken, and people don't know what's going on. So,
the community center in Hau'ula has been there for a long time, but it was mothballed, you know, for 20 years. And but it's a great place, except it's right in the flood and tsunami zone. And, you know, I worry about losing all our stuff there. But as soon as we can get the Resilience Hub built, we're just going up on the hill. And but the good thing is FEMA will replace, FEMA likes to replace old government buildings in floods and tsunami zones. So we're going to try this out. We're going to get Belangiardi behind us and maybe go for this, because that would be a perfect match, you know, and we need to do that all over the island. I don't know if anybody's as close to the water as we are, but we need to all move Malka. and it is important to have a place where people feel comfortable. And what we're working on very hard is to get as much input from the community as possible on this place and building our culture into it and making people feel just as at home there as their own home. Because people, when they're engaged and come together and share time together, they build that social capital, and that's the most important thing in the world for emergencies.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to note, I believe we've got about 10 minutes left. And also, coming back to the point that you made about the Canary Islands, you know, we consider ourselves, for obvious reasons, part of the United States, and we often look to the continent for answers. We all know in this room, island people are solving island problems. And the world is a larger island, but we're going to come up with those island resolutions and solutions from learning from other island people. So thank you for that. Where are we going now? Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, just my last slide, which is a plug for to visit hawaiipower.com/oahu, and on there it will show the renewable energy zone map, and you can place a pin in areas, and you can leave a comment. So you can leave a comment for where maybe there's a good potential for adding a resource or a certain type of resource.
So Ben, go at that. Get all your plugs in.
Yeah.
Tell us what you think about where things should go and shouldn't go. Kanani, do we have anything online? Okay. I'm sorry. Please continue.
No, that's it. And then we.
So on that note, again, we encourage you to please check out this site, and there's multiple ways to provide comment. This mapping is just for those who find it the most comfortable. Traditional methods of filling out a comment form or submitting things in writing via email, all of it will be accepted as part of this documentation process. So for those who are joining us virtually as well as those in person, please do share this if you can. And if you know people that have this information, like Dottie said, and maybe they don't want to come out in person, but would like to get that in writing so that we can carry that forward. Absolutely, it'll be documented, and we're going to share that report with you. We're going to share the maps with you. For those of you who sign up, to the extent you're willing to continue on with us, we would like to continue working with you going forward. And so transparency is a big part of this initiative and the documentation process. So all of these reports, you'll be updated, and so that you can continue along with us throughout this journey. And so again, just thank you for your time. And Ken, if you can show the questions really quickly. These are just, again, some more prompting questions. So even this will be on the website, but really we're trying to find out what factors are important to consider with the siting, with respect to siting for renewable energy on Oahu. We know that Ko'olauloa has a lot of insight on this with respect to equity, with respect to what's already in place. And so we really would like to hear from you in your own words. And again, we're not going to transcribe that, it's going to be documented as you provide it. And again, Ken, if you can show the other questions really quickly. Using this mapping tool or using the comments that you provide, we would like to know where are there opportunities, kind of like what you shared with us tonight. Where should we look at? Where should we explore as opportunities? Because now we're all looking at the same map. We're all looking at what developers are looking at, where there is renewable energy potential, and how can we use that information to align our planning with where developers are looking, with what communities would like to see. And next one, please, Ken. We also would want to know and hear from you what areas should we document that should be avoided or less preferable because of the community's insight with respect to cultural issues, already existing generation, all of those things we want to hear from you. And so again, we don't need to solve any of these challenges tonight. This is going to be something that's ongoing. But this is the type of information where, especially Ko'olauloa will be in Waianae Moku on Wednesday and going all over the island. But this is what we're trying to capture here. So if you know people that would be interested in providing this information, and it's not going to be doctored, we're going to capture it as it's received, and we really appreciate your kokua and your help in working with us throughout this process. Shelley.
Okay, before we go, I wanted to allow some time on the agenda. The new CEO of Hawaiian Electric, Shelley Kimura, came and watched us tonight. So I wanted to give her a moment to address you folks.
Aloha. Really appreciate you folks coming out tonight. And as you said, you know, we really want people to engage with us. This is really important to us. And we hope in the future more and more people are coming to engage in this discussion. But we appreciate that you guys are here. And it doesn't matter that it's a big group or a small group. Your voices and your perspective are really important to us and for those that logged on as well. And we're happy to hear from those that logged on if you folks want to give your input as well. But I think the main thing is that we want to make sure this is introduced to you folks tonight, that you folks know that you can engage with us along the way. Just as you said, your voices are really important. And we may be experts around infrastructure and how energy works, and it can get complicated and it's hard to engage with it, and we understand that. But one of the important pieces of the puzzle to come up with real solutions for Hawaii, for island people who understand island people, is the community perspective, is the knowledge and the wisdom and the experience that you folks have in your communities and living in your community. And recognizing that while these plans may be 5 years, 10 years out, it starts today, and decisions start to be made that get baked into the plans year by year that then end up being infrastructure that ends up in people's communities. And so it's really important. We want to make sure that you are part of the conversation as we design this, because we serve you. We're here to serve you. And we want to make sure we're creating a system and we're serving you in a way that aligns with what's important to you. And so we all have really important work to do. We have to get to 100% renewables. We have to make sure that it's affordable to everybody. We have to make sure we're doing it in a way that doesn't leave anybody behind, that we're thinking about the equity of it, both on the economic side, but also on the geographic side, and that's part of what we're talking about here. And you know, one of the things we talk about in our company is that we want to do this in a way that everybody thrives, that Aina thrives, that community thrives, that our economy thrives. And that's the hard part of the equation, but that's why it's important for us to be working with community, to be working with partners, because we're trying to change an entire energy ecosystem. And when you do that, it starts to impact so many other areas, so many other people. And energy intersects with everything. So we know that the way we do this, the way we transform the energy system and the energy ecosystem can have positive impacts on people and community, or it can have negative impacts on people and community. And we want to make sure we're doing it the first way, with positive impacts. And that's why your folks' input and the input of the folks who may be calling in are so important to us. And we're going to take that in and make sure that's built into the way that we're thinking about the design of our plans for the future. So thank you for taking the time and investing in this process. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
As Shelley was saying, this is really the beginning of this process. So again, please do continue on with us. Please do share this information. I also wanted to give a shout out to our colleagues over at the Centers for Resilient Neighborhoods. Miku, would you like to share a little bit about what your organization is working on? There's been really wonderful partners at the community, the grassroots community level, in terms of engaging the island of Oahu in the same type of work that Ko'olauloa is doing. Miku?
Oh, thank you so much. Should I turn around? So, hello, everybody. I'm just coming out here to support the wonderful efforts that are happening. My name's Miku Lenentine, and I'm coordinating the Center for Resilient Neighborhoods. We're based out of Kapiolani Community College, and we're also working with the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, UH Hawaii Manoa, and then also the city and county and the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resilience. And so we're basically going across the island, working with different neighborhood groups and different community centers to try to identify all of the different locations for a community resilience hub. So exactly what Dottie was talking about earlier, the importance of a community center and that human element, the human aspect of resilience that really is what makes things work when we're in the middle of a storm, when we have hard times, so that we can count on each other. So we'll be coming back up here November 16th, and gonna extend an invitation for anyone who was online tonight to come out in person. We'll have some more details, and maybe we can even set up some kind of an energy focus too, to have some follow-up from the good conversations that came out tonight. So I think I'll leave it at that. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Miku. And on behalf of Hawaii Electric, thank you so much, all of you who are joining us here tonight and online. Again, just a reminder, please do visit us at our website, where a lot of what we talked about is accessible. A lot of it, there was a lot of information shared here tonight. So please do take the time to think about a lot of these questions that we're talking about. There are no easy answers to any of this. And as Ken was showing, this is really like a giant puzzle that we're trying to piece together, but it's one that we can't put together by ourselves. And so critical is your participation, your interest, and your time in joining us as part of this process. So again, please do join us on hawaiipower.com. You can contact us directly at IGP, Integrated Grid Planning is the acronym, at hawaiielectric.com. You can send us information via email, and again, all of this will be captured and documented as part of this process. But again, on behalf of Hawaii Electric, mahalo for joining us. We will be out next again in the Nanakuli area in the Waianae-Moku on Wednesday, and we hope that you'll continue along with us, and we look forward to connecting with all of you and continuing this conversation. Mahalo.